everyone, welcome to Not the Norm. This video is about princess seams, how to create them, and dart rotations into those princess seams, and kind of a demonstration of why the princess seam is kind of the ultimate in fitting ease. So let's kind of get started here. The first thing you might want to know about princess seams is if you're starting from a pattern that has kind of a dart, a basic dart like this, you want the dart to come right up to the bust point, because if it's situated down here where they've backed off of the bust point by about an inch or so, you're going to have problems with ease when you cut this apart and then try to put it back together. So make sure that your dart is redrawn to the bust point, and you'll save yourself a little bit of heartache in the end. So we're going to do two types of patterns. We're going to do the we're going to do the princess seam from the shoulder up here, and then we're going to do it again from the arm's eye. Those are the two common places for princess seams. So using the front first, I'm going to just draw a gentle curve from about the center of the shoulder seam down to the bust point. My curved ruler here is a little bit large for these half scale patterns, so forgive me if I fool a little bit here with drawing. So there's my seam. I'm going to go ahead and put a notch, which is just a line across those two pieces, and then I'm going to put a notch again right here at the bust point so that I know that things are going back together correctly. All right, so then I'm going to just take my scissors and I'm going to cut up that seam, that line that I've drawn, separating the two patterns. Voila. Okay, so now when I look at this pattern, I have this little pointy section here that's gonna jump out when I stitch this back together and make it look like I'm extremely cold. So I'm going to go ahead and round that out a little bit. Just put your curved ruler on there and just draw an ever so slight curve to that, and then trim it away. Your notch is still there so that you know that that lines back up with your pattern like that. And then you're going to walk your pattern. You're going to start at the top there and walk it down, and the notches match here. I'm going to walk it back down again, matching up the seam, walking along, coming down here. I've got a pin under my board that I've run into. Okay, my notches match right there. I'm going to continue walking down this seam till I get to the bottom of my pattern. All right, now if you get down to the bottom here and you find that your seam is a little bit off, one being a little bit longer than the other, primarily because we trimmed out that little point here, you can cut along the bottom of your pattern and lengthen this side so that the two pieces are exactly the same length. And the reason that you do that is because you don't want to have any ease in here that you have to ease back in that reads as like a pucker. It's kind of one of those things in homemade garments that you see often, that you've tried to ease it back in, and it's not any bad skill on the part of the sewing operator. Never. We're all good seamstresses, right? A lot of times the pattern company has not made this adjustment to making it easier for you to get those seams back together. So we'll blame it on the pattern companies. So I've lengthened this just a tad just to get this back together so that these seams walk and I don't have any ease, any puckers in there that I have to deal with. Okay, so let's kind of do that one more time. I'm going to walk that pattern down, kind of putting it back together. I have to clip this away because I need to see where I'm at there. Alright, so then I'm going to put this piece back where this matches. I'm going to have this cut line parallel to itself so that I don't create any dart space or anything. Parallel and then matching here. And now I have a pattern that is back together nice and even so that when I stitch it, there's no puckers in here. Okay? So what am I going to do to the back of that pattern? Here is the back. This one's pretty easy. I am just going to connect this shoulder dart here with my waist dart like I did in the front. I'm just going to draw a line like so. I'm going to put a notch right here. And then I'm going to put a notch like right here, just so that I know when I walk these back together, I'm putting them back together correctly. I'm going to cut along my line to the dart tip, and voila. So I'm going to walk these together, starting at the top shoulder seam. Just walk them back together. Like so, shifting the pattern as I go. That notch looks pretty good, pretty close. Coming back down, that one looks really good. Come down to here. I'm going to walk down. I would assume that on the back, since there isn't a lot of curve in the back, that these patterns are probably going to walk together quite accurately, which means you're not probably going to have to add to the length to get these to walk back together smoothly. But if you do, you can just cut across the bottom and add to the one that's the shorter length. Okay, so there is the princess seam for the shoulder placement. Okay, and you can just add the seam allowances to these edges. And if you need to do more fitting, you just pinch out deeper these seams wherever you want to increase that dart space just by pinching out and pinning the way you need it. And then you can see how the dart curves to your body. So you can kind of see how it becomes the ultimate in fitting, right where you need it, over that bust. Okay, so here's the second type of princess dart that you see in patterns. This is the one that radiates to the arm's eye. This one's a little bit trickier to stitch just because it is a more curved seam, and curved seams are a little bit harder to stitch. So I'm going to make this curve as gentle as I can. I'm going to connect a point on the arm's eye to that dart tip, just like we did coming from the shoulder. I'm going to put a notch there so that I can know that it's going back together. A notch there. Okay, so then I'm just going to clip through that, like so. Have two separated patterns. Now on this one, because it's such a severe curve, I have more of a point right here that that is going to show up when I stitch this back together. We don't want to look like we're extremely cold, right? So we're going to use our ruler and we're going to get as gentle a curve and as minimal a curve as we can across that dart across that seam tip. Just like that. Okay, so I've drawn in, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm just going to curve that out a bit, round it so that it doesn't come out pointy when I stitch it back together. All right, so now that I've done that, I have essentially shortened the length of that pattern a little bit. So when I go to walk that back together, I am most likely going to end up a little bit short here. So let's go ahead and walk the pattern. There's that one. It's coming back together pretty well, pretty well. Dart changes just a little bit at that tip there. It's okay, it doesn't have to be super perfect. I just want it to come back together really smooth. And I do have a little bit of a gap down here between the two patterns. So I'm going to cut across the bottom of this one. Like so. Cut across it. I'm going to put a little bit of paper underneath it. Like that. There we go. I'll walk it one more time to find out how much length it needs. All right, I'm down here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my pattern on there so that it matches right here at this point. And I'm going to put some tape on it, and I'm going to be sure that these two lines right here are parallel to each other. All right, so there's my new pattern, and those pieces walk together nice and smooth, no puckers. All right, so now what do I do with the back? The back is interesting because I have this dart up here. And of course I don't want darts everywhere. That would be kind of weird looking. I mean, you could do it if you wanted to, but it would be a little unconventional. Okay, so I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to try to get in here as gentle a curve as I possibly can. All right. So there's my curve. I'm going to put in a couple notches here just so that I know that I'm walking back together fairly accurately. Then I'm going to draw a line from my shoulder dart up here down to my dart tip below. All right. So now I am going to transfer this dart space into this space over here. So first, I'm going to cut this line. I'm going to cut down to that tip, but not through it. I'm going to leave like a little hinge. Okay? So then I'm going to cut along this space also, down to that point, but not through. I'm going to leave a hinge. Got it? So then I'm going to take this dart space right here, and I'm going to move it over and close it so that that dart space is completely closed. Put a little bit of tape on it. Might have a little jog in the seam here, and I just take my ruler and just draw across that to even it out. Okay. So now that I have my dart space rotated in down here, I'm going to continue to separate that pattern into two pieces, like that. Okay. Now, this pattern, the back pattern, doesn't have as much curve to it with the darts. The darts are not as severe. So when you go to walk this pattern back together, it is most likely that it will walk and it will come out correct in the length. We want the same length between the two pieces because we don't want to have to do any gathering that'll create puckering in the seam. Okay, so I walk that together. But if you do walk it and you find that one is larger or longer than the other, cut across the pattern, lengthen or shorten it so that these seams walk together and measure the same length. That way you'll have a nice clean seam, no gathers or puckers when you try to put those back together. So that is basically princess seams, one from the arm side, one from the shoulder. You add a seam allowance to those edges there, and during fitting you can increase and decrease this dart space by just pinning it out and then remarking on your pattern. And like I said, princess seams are the ultimate in fitting because you can just kind of get them perfect just by pinning them. All right, so that's all I have to say about princess seams, and hope you stay on the site, look for more good information, and we'll see you on another video with more stuff. Okay, bye.